Good morning and welcome to Radio Friends on Friday, April the 19th. This is Good Friday. We're in Passover. Easter Sunday is coming up, and we have none other than Larry Brown. How appropriate for this time of year to have you, Larry.
Well, thank you.
And you're going to share a story.
Yes. Well, since this is a week for many religions.
For the Jewish people and the Christian people.
And others who celebrate, again, the transition to spring as a part of what's going on. I thought maybe a story of self-giving, of altruism might be appropriate. And the story I share is, I have to tell people who listen to my stories, this is all true.
This is a true story.
Historically, one could document the following.
Does it have a name?
Well, I've been sort of calling it drowning.
Drowning?
Drowning.
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 All right, so on this Good Friday, here is Larry Brown with a story called Drowning.
A number of years ago, I would take teenagers on a week-long canoe trip on the Current River. And typically we would have 3 adults and 15 kids, so we would take 8 canoes. And we would take everything we needed for the week, all of our camping equipment, food, supplies. And sometimes those teenagers would be kids who had no experience at all being in a canoe, or let alone camping out in the woods at night. But by the end of the week, there was a spirit of cooperation, and I could see in individual kids that they'd matured and learned how to handle themselves in stressful situations. And canoeing on a Missouri stream can produce stressful situations, as was the case this particular year. We'd stopped at Acres Ferry, and the rangers had warned us that a tree had fallen over the river, and they hadn't had time to take it out, so it created a snag, but it was a very dangerous situation. So they warned us to not try to go through the tree or under it, but to stop, get on the gravel bar and portage your canoe around the snag and continue on. So when we got to that point in the river, I got in the lead of my group and got off on the gravel bar and was signaling my kids to stop, get off, and go around the tree. Well, one canoe, 2 kids, didn't make the stop. They just went right into that tree. The canoe rolled under the tree. Both kids went under the tree and underwater. One kid popped up. The canoe did pop up, and then another kid popped up who'd been under the canoe, and here I am, panicking around the edges. Well, we got our kids to shore safely, got the canoe. We lost some stuff, but I was getting all my kids corralled, ready to leave. When coming down the river were 2 adults in a canoe, not related to our group, and I watched them just go right into that same tree. But this time their canoe kind of went underneath and turned sideways and was obviously wedged under the tree. The man had been thrown out and he popped up on the other side, but the woman had somehow gotten herself hanging onto the tree and was being sucked down into that submerged canoe. And I stood there on the shore deciding what to do. And in that moment, I flashed back to my college years. I had been with a friend out at a lake. We'd been swimming. We're laying on the beach, and people were yelling and screaming that someone was drowning. And I had, at that time, certified Red Cross life-saving certification. I knew what to do. Well, I jumped up, grabbed the inner tube, and kind of went around the corner. I couldn't see where it was, and by the time I got there, it was a boat pulling someone out of the water, and 3 young men were already swimming out and were dozens of yards out into the lake already, and I was seeing that folks were getting rescued. But then one of those doing the rescue went underwater, and in effect, what happened was 2 people drowned that afternoon as I stood on the shore. And I kind of made a vow to myself, I'm not going to hesitate. Now, of course, in that situation, I probably wouldn't have been of help. Things had already happened, but you know how one justifies one's behavior. Well, that flashed back into my mind as I was on the gravel bar looking at that woman caught on the tree. And I didn't hesitate. I swam out to that tree, climbed up on the tree, and there was the woman desperately hanging on, and I got a hold of her arms, and I braced myself against the tree, and I could not pull her out of the water. It was like a cork in a bottle. I just couldn't pull her out. And she was looking up at me, crying desperately and saying things like, "Let me go, I know I'm going to drown." And, I couldn't assure her anything except, I'm not going to let go. And so I just hung on. Another man over on the gravel bar saw what was happening, swam out to the tree, got up with me, and the two of us working together pulled her out of the water and got her safely to shore. Well, I had to take care of my kids and get them, ready to go on down the river, and we didn't have much time to exchange niceties afterwards, but thank yous were passed around, and the canoe was stuck under the tree, only to be probably, when they cut the tree out, would the canoe be rescued, but they were assured that someone was coming to help them, and things were underway, and we went on down the river. But remembering, there are times when we're called to action, and we just will do it. And I sort of, again, rehearsed back in my life again that when there are those in need, do what we can. We may not be at the right time in the right place for something as dramatic as what I described, but there's always so many ways that we can serve one another and maybe indeed be a rescuer.
Yeah. Sometimes you've just got to follow your gut instinct.
Yeah.
Follow your gut instinct. That's a beautiful story, Larry. That really is a beautiful story.
Well, it's kind of a cautionary tale. And for, of course, the kids on that canoe trip, it was like, no, see what happens if you don't, quote unquote, follow instructions.
Right.
But don't panic and deal with situations as you can. And,
yeah. Well, surely those kids must have looked up to you more after that.
Well, I'd say it changed the mood of the,
right.
the trip.
And you realize
certainly.
that you're there to have a good time, but it could have all ended in a different way for any one of them.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah. Well, it's a good story for Good Friday and Passover, and it has a wonderful message of how we can all help each other in times of need.
Certainly. And that's how many desperate situations do we encounter every day, whether they're small things or global issues.
All we have to do is open our eyes, and they were all around us.
That's right.
You've got beautiful stories and songs. If people would like to have some?
Well, best way is to get a hold of me by email, brownstory@hotmail.com.
And do you have any events coming up?
Well, yeah, I've got some storytelling at, let's see, we've got some schools coming up, and going to be doing a presentation at church, so yeah.
Okay, all right, just go to Larry's website, and you can find all the information that you need. And even samples. Don't you have samples on your website?
Well, mostly they're samples from Radio Friends with Paul Pepper.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much, Larry Brown, and happy Easter to you.
Happy Easter.
All right, Monday, we've got Children's Grove and Best of Missouri Life. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Be nice to each other. We'll see you Monday.